Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here this morning. I'll just get straight into it. I suppose I'm going to start with a brief introduction, housing in Ireland, modular, and then moving on to modular housing, and then a short kind of case study or just an overview in terms of companies that are doing modular construction within Ireland and the UK, and just naming some companies. So just to explain something about my own practice, obviously we're one of the leading architectural practices in Ireland. We have extensive residential experience and delivered 10,000 residential units over the last 10, 15 years. We've also 40 years of being in practice and working on various different projects, from housing to pharmaceutical to hospitals to education and so on. And probably going back maybe 5-6 years, we kind of focus a lot in terms of investigating modular solutions, fast track modular solutions in various different, in the pharma industry, and now obviously the housing industry is looking, it's obviously a key indicator at the moment. So moving on. So I want to start the presentation is in terms of kind of house ownership. So Ireland, obviously back before the previous recession, was a huge kind of house ownership was very high. And in my slide, I suppose the top slide, I suppose, indicates house ownership and how it's dropped over the years, and to the present day. The slide below it indicates, I suppose, the dotted line is house ownership in the UK, and the blue indicates house ownership in Ireland. So you can see that house ownership has kind of risen faster in the UK than it has in Ireland. And then the lower slide indicates a comparison between Ireland and the USA. So Ireland is indicated in the dotted line on the lower chart, and the US is the blue. So you can see how the US and the UK are kind of recovering a lot faster in terms of house ownership rates. Today, I suppose, home ownership has dropped, soaring rent prices, homelessness climbing, and shortage of housing. So we've done a kind of a comparison in terms of getting statistics from, going back as far as 1990 in terms of complete houses that were complete, and going through the years. So you can see back in, I suppose, 1990, they were just below 20,000 units a year, and obviously it soared to back in 2005 to around 88,000 units. And then obviously when you see 2009 and 11, it just fell off a cliff, So at the present day, at 2019 figures, we're at 12,529 units, houses now, not apartments. When you apply the apartment figure on top, it's higher, but just for houses, we're at that figure. And you can see that the 35,000 units per year is what the government wants us to achieve and get to that kind of equilibrium in terms of the housing market. So this slide shows housing versus construction workforce. So the top figures are supply of houses, and the below blue figures are in terms of people working in the construction sector. So you can see, as I said, back in 2003, how it rose and then sharply fell, and then how it's kind of slowly going back up, and how I suppose the workforce is there. I suppose the workforce figures are kind of slightly distorted because that's not just all for the residential industry. It's there's office, commercial, the pharma, building, kind of Intel, and so on. So, but what you can see is that the workforce is kind of slowly building back up, but it's not solely towards the residential sector. So there was a kind of an article there over the weekend by Dermot Desmond. I don't know if people have read it, and this is just some information, some kind of extracts from that article. But according to the recent industry, 21,000 homes were constructed, of which 8,000 were only available for sale. And cast this, in contrast, to 80,000 in terms of new job creations, and also the formation of new households, or around 46,000. So we've got we've got a long way to go within the housing sector going forward. And then the below is a chart from the Central Statistics Office in terms of the comparison of single dwellings over scheme, which are kind of houses over apartments. So, the government is obviously saying it's 21,000 houses were completed this year, but you can see that, I suppose there's 3,600 of them were associated with apartments and 5,000 were single dwellings in the country. So we've still got quite a long way to go. So also in this article they kind of mentioned kind of a snapshot, like 5% of apartment buildings 5% of apartment buildings were available for purchase, and only 5% were available for sale, and 90% went to institutional investors. And then a total of 8,000 new homes / apartments were available for sale. So you can see, I suppose the challenges that we have, and a lot of these build to rent schemes that are happening in Dublin, and really it's kind of distorting the numbers in terms of people getting on the housing ladder. So factors affecting the cost, so on the house side, things that have attributed to rising kind of house prices. So on the actual physical building side, Irish Water costs, planning, B-car costs, tax, development contributions, shortage of skilled labourers, NZEB requirements, disposal of construction waste, and shortage of sites. So that's on the house, that increased just the house costs. And then on the land side, then you have land tax, a shortage of zoned residential land, institutional investors buying up large blocks of apartments and schemes, and then obviously land banking by developers, and then the rise of build to rent schemes. So what we've done is, in terms of looked at just analysing the average kind of borrowing capacity, and just comparing it from Waterford, say, to Dublin. So in Waterford, the average is around 39,500. In Dublin, it's 50,800. So when you apply for a single person, when you apply that multiplier of 3.5 when you go to the bank, that's 140,000 roughly in Waterford, and 177 in Dublin, right? And that's what you're talking about. So when you go across and you look at the shortfalls in terms of a single person, obviously many properties are outside the reach of a single person, and it'll have to be a couple that buys it. So that reduces the amount of quantity in terms of people who can actually get on afford to buy a house and get on the housing ladder. So in Waterford, because obviously it hasn't moved as fast as the Dublin market, it's slightly less at 48,000 of a shortfall. But in Dublin, you can see that it's a huge disparity there, of 177,000 for one person. So there has to be ways in terms of how do we address that? Because banks are back, AIB and Bank of Ireland, they're all kind of meeting us about how do we deliver more houses? How can they're pushing out the message that we're out here to do business. But I think, my personal opinion, until the multiplier kind of changes slightly and houses get cheaper, we're not going to we even get started on fixing the housing issue in Ireland. So I suppose an increasing supply of private market houses and buildings do not necessarily reduce the price and rent. Therefore, it's it's not about the supply, but it's about the type of supply. So the solution alone is not built to rent or co-living. So the figures that we've been shown by the government are quite distorted, because there's a lot of built to rent schemes coming out within the Dublin market, and it's kind of distorting in terms of what is available for sale. So it's getting the right houses for the public to buy and invest and move forward. So this is just the average. So just going back to, I think I went backwards there, did I? Sorry. Oh yeah. Okay. So I suppose this slide is just bringing it forward to, in terms of if we can look at modular construction, and there's ways to be more cost effective in terms of how we deliver houses. It can reduce the overall house price, and then reduce the overall sales price of that house. So this is a company that we're kind of working with at the moment in the UK. They're called I Like Homes, and they're quite established in the UK at the moment. And they've come up with kind of models making houses more efficient to build, a bit more cost effective. So they're saying a 3-bedroom house that they can deliver roughly for 65,000. That's just for the house now. That's not including the land and the site infrastructure costs and so on. So they're looking at ways of making houses themselves more affordable and bringing them into the market and a rapid scale. So, as I said, modular housing is one part of the solution to solving the housing crisis. It's not the only, there's many other issues that we have to resolve to get on top of it. So, what is modular construction? I suppose there's sectional prefabrication of houses, which is up above, and then you get the full volumetric, kind of almost fully finished blocks that are built in factories and delivered to site. I suppose, why do we need modular housing? I suppose cost efficiency. All this is done in factories, less wastage, more kind of higher efficiency, done in kind of environmentally friendly, in kind of large warehouses, so not weather dependent. Obviously time in terms of that efficiency, and also going on site, less on site time when you get to site. Obviously the construction method, so there's various different ways where it's CLT, which is a timber system, or light gauge steel, or ICF, or so on. They're all different methods of delivering. And then obviously the carbon footprint is important. So one of the key things is you can control more wastage on site, get more efficiency within the panels that you're building, or the modules that you're building. So I suppose, what is the process of modular construction? So I suppose the first is obviously production. Like the slide up here, it's kind of done the same way in a car factory. It's on a line, and it's different people complete the different, the first fix, electric, second fix, and so on. It moves on, and then it pushes out down the factory, and then it goes out the door. Obviously transportation is a big component to modular, and it really dictates the size of the modular unit that you can go up to. So normally it's, I don't know, maybe just under 5 meters by maybe it goes 9 or maybe even 11 meters or 12 meters long, depending, or possibly longer in some cases. And then the assembly on site. I suppose the assembly on site, you can see that it's very quick, and some products obviously come with their external cladding on site, so it can be delivered within, when you're on site, to be maybe 2 days. You could have your house up and running and ready to occupy. So why has modular housing haven't taken off in the past? I suppose that there is a perception out there that it's low quality, it's bad design, and that dates back to I suppose a long time, and that it's maybe not as energy efficient. But I suppose that's not the case these days. I suppose, why has modular taken off? I suppose there's also in Ireland, there's economic of scale. So in the UK and other markets, it's a lot easier to kind of you have to be producing a lot of these units, like maybe at least 500 in terms of, say, full volumetric houses, and then you need the demand to supply that. So in larger markets, it probably suits it, and Ireland is, I suppose, it's on the cups of kind of creating that demand for companies to fill it. And I suppose there's also planning. In terms of getting planning permissions through here, where it's quite intensive. Planners like to see not just one house type; they'd like to see a variety of different house types, and which I suppose I wouldn't say you can do in modular, but it lowers the efficiency rate in terms of having multiple different house types. So I suppose the advantages and disadvantages. So the advantages are obviously speed of construction, indoor construction, low waste, environmentally friendly, flexible, high quality, and improved air quality. I suppose some of the disadvantages would be transport flexibility, and the financial, in terms of scale of production, to be able to scale up to the numbers to make it a viable business. So like flexibility is a key part of it. Like it's a bit more difficult to make, but you can't really kind of, in a lot of cases, make changes on site with a lot of these different systems. So just moving on to one of the last slides. So just talking about, there's many different companies that are, I suppose, doing modular constructions at different type of, offering different type of systems and so on. Like so, as I said to you, we're working with I Like Homes at the moment. They're a UK company, and they've got a factory in the north of England, and they want to roll up to around 2,000 units a year and rolling out of that factory. And they're interested in the Irish market for the obvious reasons. Haas is another kind of small kind of modular company, Vision, Urban Splash, and Mac, Skystone, MHI. These are just some of the companies that we know of and that we've talked to over probably the last 5 years. Vision are doing kind of multiple, like 70-story buildings in London, and that was kind of originally based from a kind of an Irish-based kind of company, and which was then bought out. So just moving on to the last, and there's a small kind of video, if I can get this to play. I don't know if that'll play, maybe probably not. I don't know how to, yeah. I don't know how to press that. Oh, you just press the link, is it? And if it opens up, it just gives you.
This is good.
But it'll just give you an idea. It just shows the company that we're working with, I Like, in terms of their factory. But it's in a minute and a half, and it shows you just, you know, a good impression of what a modular factory looks like, how it operates if it opens up. Here we go. And yeah, that concludes my presentation. So if anybody has any questions afterwards, please feel free to ask me some questions. Thank you.